This video is part of a series about the practical details of travelling to a plant medicine retreat in South America. Now I'll leave a link up there or down there somewhere to the full playlist, so if you're organising a trip for yourself and have some questions about the planning or logistics side of things, then go and check that out. I'll also put some links in the description below to my subreddit and Discord, where you can come and ask me anything in person and I'll do my best to help you. And I'll also put down there some timestamps to the main talking points of this video. In this particular episode, I'm going to talk about some of the complications around travelling to a retreat during the current pandemic. You know, the safety measures that should be in place at the retreat, and my personal experience around things like COVID tests and vaccinations. Hopefully, from all that, you'll be able to decide whether this is the right time for you to travel, or maybe it's worth holding on until things have calmed down a little bit. So I need to put a couple of quick disclaimers in here. Firstly, what I describe here is correct as of the time I made this video. Obviously things can change, and hopefully at some point this video will be entirely redundant, but for the moment this is how it is. And if you're watching this from some point in the future when all of this was a distant memory, then yeah, 2021 was fucking mental. Disclaimer number 2, I appreciate that this COVID situation is a bit of a hot topic for some people, but I will say now up front that I am not interested at all about any kind of like conspiracy theory, plandemics type stuff. And to be honest, what I'm going to say in this video isn't going to try and convince you one way or the other. It's simply the factual steps that you have to go through in order to travel to South America. So let's tackle the big question first. Do you need to be vaccinated in order to travel to Peru? And the answer is no. You do not need to have had the COVID vaccination in order to get into Peru. But you will have to have some other things in place. Firstly, in order to get on the plane in your country of origin, you'll probably need to have a negative COVID test, of which there are 2 possible types. Now, one of these is valid for 72 hours, but takes longer to get the results and is typically more expensive. And the other, which is cheaper, gets the results within a few minutes, but is only valid for 24 hours. So your time constraints are a lot tighter. Okay, so let's unpack these time limits around these tests, because I've seen people getting very confused about what is required here. So as I just mentioned, there are 2 kinds of tests. One which will clear you for travel within a 72-hour window, but for the results it takes a few hours, sometimes even a full day. And then there is a second, rapid test, which gets the results within a few minutes, but that result is only valid for 24 hours. Now, seeing as a trip to South America will often involve multiple flights across multiple countries, then you can see where the confusion arises. Do you need to get tested before every flight in every country? And the answer is probably not, but it depends. If you are taking one flight after another without leaving the airport to go sightseeing or staying overnight, then you will only have to show the test result once as you get on the very first flight, and again upon reaching Peru. What they'll be checking for when you reach Peru is that the test was valid when you got on the plane, not that it's still valid at that moment, because obviously some of these flights can take a very long time. Now, if you leave the airport while you're in transit by going through customs and going to a hotel, for like an overnight stay, then as far as your tests go, you are pretty much back at square one, and they will be checked again as you get onto your next flight. So you need to make sure that the test result you have is still valid when you get onto that next flight, when you go through that next set of checks. Or you'll need to get another test, which can be a little bit stressful. So I'll explain exactly what I did, and hopefully this will make sense. So my flight schedule looked like this, with my first flight to Amsterdam happening on Thursday night, and then I did an overnight stay in a hotel in Amsterdam. Then I had my long-haul flight to Lima happening around lunchtime the day after. With this in mind, I needed a test which would be valid for both flights, as I would be checked twice, once on my way to Amsterdam and again on my way to Lima. I chose to get a 24-hour test done at around 3 PM on the Thursday. So I got the result back within about 10 minutes, and now I was good for my Amsterdam flight that night. And because of the timing I got it done, I was also good for my transcontinental flight to Peru the next day. Now, for some people, this might be a little bit too close to call, and they might want the results in their hand in advance. And in that case, maybe you want to get the 72-hour test and do it, say, a day or so before. But for me, I was confident with my doctor getting me the result quickly, and so it wasn't a big deal. Once you arrive in Lima, then there isn't any additional testing to move around within the country. So if you wanted to fly from, say, Lima to Iquitos, which is where I've just been in the jungle, then you don't need another test to get to Iquitos. Likewise, if you wanted to fly to Cusco or go to Sacred Valley, same situation. There is an additional document that you need to fill in online before they will let you into Peru, and this needs to be done within 72 hours of your first flight. I will put a link to that online form in the description below. Now, the form itself isn't particularly complicated, but its English translation isn't the best, so it can be a little bit confusing. But if I can manage it, then I'm sure you can. It basically just tells the authorities in Peru where you are staying, so that if they realise that someone on your flight was infected, then they know where to find you. Once you fill the form in, they will email it to you, and you need to print this out because they'll ask to see it when you get to immigration in Peru. So that handles you getting into the actual country, but chances are that the retreat centre you are travelling to will test you again. And this is to make sure that nobody's picked anything up while in transit, and to give you the peace of mind that the person next to you who's throwing the guts up isn't infected with COVID. And in my case, this was completely organised and paid for by the retreat, so there was zero additional stress or hassle for me around this. So this is where I want to give a quick tip of the hat to the retreat organisation that I went with, which was Acacia. They arranged all of this very quickly and efficiently. It wasn't a big deal. And they also sorted it all out again after the retreat was over, because everything I just mentioned you will have to do again in order to get on the plane which is going to take you home. So having the retreat centre take care of that for you in a foreign country where your language skills might not be too great, well, let's just say it really helps, like a lot. So now I want to talk a little bit about the vaccine, because depending on which country you are travelling from or to, if you have the vaccine, then you can bypass a lot of the bullshit that I just talked about. So in my situation, since I am fully vaccinated against COVID, then I did not have to do any of this testing on the way home, which was nice. Now again, I want to stress that this may vary greatly depending on which airline you are travelling with, where you're going to, or even which vaccine you've had. So make sure you check with the regulations of your own country. But for me, I live in Switzerland, I got vaccinated in Switzerland, and so Switzerland were happy to let me back in afterwards without any additional testing. And I believe this is true for most countries in the Schengen area of Europe. So with that in mind, do I think it's worth getting vaccinated? Yes, I do. For me personally, I do a lot of travel, and I want that experience to be as hassle-free and I have peace of mind that I'm not going to infect my friends and family with COVID, which doesn't seem particularly a controversial viewpoint to me, but hey ho. Anyway, since we're talking about vaccines, then I have seen some people ask whether the vaccine had any effect on the psychedelic substances, such as in like stopping them from working. In my experience, I can say that this is absolutely not the case, and I have been ecstatically off my tits in transdimensional hyperspace for the last week, so stay tuned for some very interesting trip reports. One last thing I will mention is that during the travel, while you're on all those flights and at the airports, you will be expected to wear face masks, sometimes even 2 face masks, so it's worth investing in a comfortable one. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you found something useful in there that helps you plan your own trip. As always, a big thank you to those who support me via Patreon, and also to any of you guys who sat through an advert to watch this. It's very much appreciated. Thanks again for watching. My name's Rob, this is Adeptus Psychonautica, and I'll see you next time.